Good day, fellow Jersey Nerds, and welcome to episode 74 of the Jersey Nerds podcast, powered by HockeyJerseyConcepts.com. I'm your host, Ryan, and today on the Nerdcast, we got nothing planned. It's fucking crickets out there as far as logo news goes or jersey news goes, anything interesting. There's not really a whole lot going on. We are going to get into some logos, but kind of that's what Throwback Throwdown is for. So joining me for this adventure into the unknown is fellow co-host Shawn. What's going on today, Shawn?
Well, a beautiful, beautiful day today as both of my teams have clinched playoff spots as of the recording of this podcast. Wonderful, wonderful time. Now, if only we could get my Hinge team in, that'd be great.
So who are your teams? I know Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, a little bit of a homer, going to throw Toronto in there. And my Hinge team, Arizona.
They're
see it happen.
Yeah, they sold out their game the other night.
They are doing better than some teams who you'd really expect to do well in attendance. And the future's bright for them. Even if they don't make the playoffs this year, the future is bright in the desert. Today's jersey, similar to today's podcast, is one with no plan or feeling, really. It's an original Edge Flyers black jersey, a jersey I really didn't care for until I found one for $10 at a thrift store.
I don't even know if I could pick that one up. The original black Edge Flyers. I couldn't even pick that up for $10. I don't.
It's very nostalgic.
It's like Reebok Edge dipping their toes in the water and then being like, no, that's too cold for us, and going back to the hot tub. That Flyers jersey is the pool that's too cold.
Just think about everything right they did with the white jersey and how that was lightning in a bottle, and how it's like, oh, you weren't even trying, but you made something pretty cool. The black jersey is like, oh yeah, that's why you don't do that.
The Flyers were definitely black for black's sake. There was no reason for them to put on a black jersey. Like, as an alternate in the mid-2000s, it was incredibly appropriate. But to promote it to full-time was just black for black's sake.
The fact that this is the jersey that led into, they didn't wear this for the Cup final. In fact, they ditched this at the end of the year. But the fact that they wore this that entire year, and there's so many that, again, similar to the team that made it to the Stanley Cup final that year, lightning in a bottle, this jersey is associated with it. So, I've got positive memories of this jersey. I do really like it, but it's in the same way that, your crappy Pee Wee jersey is nostalgic, and it's like, oh, this thing looks terrible, but man, did we have a good time with this.
Yeah, that was 2010 when the Flyers made the final, and they were wearing their alternate at the time, which is their current home, and their original Edge Road, which, I guess you like that one too. I think they're just atrocious. I think they have no kind of direction to them.
They really don't. It's very templated. I was actually a Flyers fan for that year.
Wow.
I don't know why. There were so many players I liked on that team. It was just literally going through the roster and I like every single one of these players.
What do they have? Pronger, Timonen, Mike Richards.
Yep. Jeff Carter, Gagne, Michael Leighton, Brian Boucher, Danny Briere.
Who was supposed to be their goalie that year? Leighton wasn't. Who was it?
Boucher was supposed to be the goalie, and then he got hurt.
Really? Okay. I thought it might have been Emery that year, but I guess not.
That would have been 2 years after.
All right.
Because then 3 years after that, he won the Jennings with Chicago.
That was the year. Yeah, that was the year of the final that had just the worst goaltending imaginable.
Niemi versus Michael Leighton.
Yeah.
It's sad when Michael Leighton outplays Anthony Niemi at the NHL level.
It's sad when those two guys are battling it out in a Stanley Cup final.
And who are your other options? Cristobal Huet and Brian Boucher.
Cristobal Huet coming back from vertigo, I believe, at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, he was hurt for the whole year, and he got his cup. He got his ring.
Yeah, and also on that Hawks team as a black ace, Corey Crawford, I believe.
He might have been.
So I don't know if they get rings. I wouldn't think they get rings if you're a black ace. You don't get your name on the cup. You do get to skate around with it.
Yeah, because JVR's brother got to do that in 2015.
Yeah. So that would be an interesting question. Would you go out there as a black ace doing all the extra skating every day, but you know your team is going to win the Stanley Cup and you get that moment to lift the cup? So you don't get a ring, you don't get your name on the cup, but you got to put in the work to be a black ace and you get to carry around the cup on the ice. Is it worth it?
I almost wonder if it is, especially if you're Corey Crawford. I just get the feeling Corey Crawford knew that he was going to get a chance to do this a couple more times.
I think the big thing for me is lifting the Stanley Cup. Like that's the privilege, right? Like a regular Joe just can't lift the Stanley Cup. I mean, you could if you walked into the Hall of Fame and never wanted to walk in again. I suppose you could lift the Stanley Cup. But as far as being allowed to, it's a privilege kind of exclusively reserved for NHL players. So that'd be another interesting question. Would you? I think we had that on Fake or Authentic before. Would you take the lifetime ban from the Hall of Fame in exchange for running in there and lifting the Stanley Cup?
Too many cool jerseys to do that.
Every time I've gone to the Hall of Fame, which I haven't gone in a while, the guy who sits there and takes the photo of whoever with the Stanley Cup, and then you can pay $40 at the end at the gift shop to get a printout in a little paper folder. But he never has any clue. It's a minimum wage employee, right? So what does he care? But he never has any clue about the Stanley Cup, and he tries to convince people that it is the real Stanley Cup, or as the Hall of Fame tries to tell you, there are two Stanley Cups, which is just bullshit. There's one actual Stanley Cup that's always presented on the ice, and then there's another Stanley Cup that always stays at the Hall of Fame when the real Stanley Cup isn't there, which is like 80% of the time.
I have been there when it was the real cup, like the real cup. It's like 2 weeks a year, and you have to know someone who knows when it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they don't announce it.
No, never.
They didn't. They don't. Like you have to know someone who know. Yeah, you have to know someone who, at the Hall of Fame.
There's two telltale ways to find out if it's the real cup. First off, the real cup has all sorts of dents and markings on it. It's far more marked up than the show cup. But I always go to the 84 Oilers because Peter Pocklington put his dad's name on it, and they said, no, you can't do that, and they put X's through it. So that's one way to tell. And the other way to tell is I believe it was 95, 96, or maybe Alex Tanguay's first cup was 2000, 2001 with the Avalanche.
It would have been 2000.
And it's spelt incorrectly. I think it's Tangauy. So that's how I always tell. But yeah, so the guy taking the photo never knows what's going on with the cup, or I hate how they pass off that the quote show cup is a real Stanley Cup. But no, it's not. It just sits at the Hall of Fame.
So the real one's in the vault.
Yeah, that's true. So that's cool to see. How about the CWHL ceasing operations?
I mean, the NWHL is NHL backed. The CWHL wasn't.
I thought it wasn't backed yet.
Not yet?
I don't know. I thought that was the whole holdup.
I was hoping they'd merge. I didn't like the idea of there being two leagues.
Apparently,
because it just felt like one was taking away from the other.
From what I hear, and I might be wrong, the NWHL is very female focused, including in the front offices, which is understandable. And that was one of the holdups, including insurance and other things and travel. But that was one of the holdups with a merger with the CWHL.
Well,
and that is apparently also one of the holdups when it comes to an NHL-backed league. So I suppose, I don't know, the NWHL would love to be backed in some way by the NHL, but without any administrative interference, which I don't think can happen. You're not really going to get their money without them having a say on what it does.
You know, there were some nice logos in there. In fact, actually, this past year there wasn't a bad one. The Infernos, I always liked their logo. They were all NHL copies, you know, which is fine. I mean, if you look at their original stuff, they never really had the best graphic artists.
Yeah.
But when they started taking direct inspiration from NHL teams, they actually made some pretty solid identities here. You know, Les Canadiens was probably my favorite one, actually, because they took the Star de Montreal, which was a terrible, terrible logo, and worked it into something pretty solid. Markham was a pleasant surprise. They won the year before.
Yeah.
And going back to the old NWHL, it's a treat. If you would like to go back and look at what women's hockey was a decade ago in terms of logo design, there are some absolute gems. My personal favorite, the Calgary Oval Extreme. I think every kid around would remember that, you know, this was around the time Haley Wickenheiser was just getting big, and she was on that team. So I think every kid can remember reading some sort of news article in something about the Calgary Oval Extreme, and for some reason they'll remember that.
There were some. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like they were doing particularly well financially, and I wish there was a way to merge the leagues and get them to expand a little bit. You know, I think that it's just a shame, really. But you know, if the league isn't making money, I don't know how you continue without getting backed by the NHL.
Yeah, and I like the Clarkson Cup. It was donated in the exact same way that the Stanley Cup was donated back in 1893. It was a governor general, or actually Lord Stanley donated the cup to upon visiting Canada. But the Clarkson Cup was named after Canada's governor general. Have I said that right? I think I said that right.
Yeah.
Adrienne Clarkson, I believe, was her name. Anyways, she donated the cup and left it very vague on purpose. It was just supposed to denote the best women's hockey players in the world. And so she donated the cup for that reason. So it became the championship trophy in the CWHL. And it really would be a shame to just see it go away. I would really like to see some sort of, I don't think the NWHL will take on the cup, but I would like to see maybe a series between Canada and the U.S. women's teams come about where the winner does get the Clarkson Cup, because I do not want to see that trophy go away.
No, I'd hate to see it go the way of the Avco Cup.
The Avco Cup. That one was a beaut.
That's a beautiful trophy, won the most times by Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Jets.
Won the Avco Cup more than any other team, but I think only 3 or 4 different teams actually won the Avco Cup, so take that as you will.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yet the WHA is kind of thought about fondly from the people who enjoyed it.
Yeah, you know what? For the first 3 years, I can't blame you. I can't imagine going from 75, 76 to 76, 77 and like just all of a sudden most of your favorite teams are gone.
Yeah, that's a kick in the pills. Definitely. Can you imagine if a rival league struck up now? I mean, the NHL's too big for it to happen, but
I remember when people were saying the KHL was a rival league.
No.
That was hilarious.
From my understanding, the KHL is a dirty league that struggles to compete in comparison to the AHL. So I've never watched a single KHL game, so I don't know.
I've seen one game. It's okay hockey.
I do know. I know that I work with someone who
Yager left.
He left because it just got too dirty.
It was dirty, yeah.
But I wonder if he was allowed to wear that Gretzky Jofa helmet that he loves to wear, or if he's allowed to wear it in the Czech league.
Well, he owns the team. He can do whatever he wants.
That's
in that
true.
league.
That's true. I work with a guy who occasionally heavily gets into betting on KHL games. And because
it sounds like you're gonna have a guy in a suit, really thick Russian guy, just show up at your work and
drop off an old duffel bag of ruples,
or come to collect an old duffel bag of ruples.
Exactly. Yeah, I should have told the guy, hey, don't get too in deep on this. And it's my understanding the league is also rigged. CSKA Moscow is supposed to win every year. Or that was the story that came out last year, because that's Putin's team. And so Putin's team can't lose. Anyways, I'm sitting at a new desk. I put together a new podcast desk today, which of course is very meaningful to all the listeners. Even if you bought the $200 video feed, you wouldn't be able to see this desk. But I went to, brace yourself, I went to Ikea on a weekend. Oh. Ikea on a weekend is not a good idea. I don't know what's worse, Ikea on a weekend or Costco on a weekend. But I went to Ikea and it was bad.
I have no there is one redeeming quality about Ikea, and that's getting your reward at the end of going to Ikea, which is your 2 hot dogs and a pop for like $3, which I know a lot of Americans are going, well, yeah, that's what it costs. And it's like, not up here. It's a treat for that to cost that little. So it's the one redeeming quality.
And they're unapologetic about those hot dogs too. I think they're just steaming them in hot water, throw it in a bun, and it's like, that's $1. You can eat it or you can not eat it.
And every time I go,
I ate it.
I feel I walk through, I get lost every time I go to Ikea. And when I get myself unlost, I just sort of walk over to the hot dog stand. I'm like, I've earned this. I know what I've been through. I've earned it.
I always take pictures of the stuff like, oh, that's neat. I want to buy that. That's neat. I want to buy that. And then, you get downstairs to the kind of pickup area where you got to go to the aisles and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going through the stuff. I'm like, nah, I don't need that. I don't need that. All the stuff that I just took pictures of. It's like, nah, I don't need that. So Ikea was a fun adventure. And there's shopping carts too, with the wheels where you can really you could glide the cart sideways if you wanted to. If you're going down a hill with an Ikea shopping cart, that thing can get away on you in a hurry. Like, that's a fucked up shopping cart.
It is.
Anyway, so my new table is holding up nicely. I was previously on some sort of crappy fold-out table, but now I have this hard as a rock Ikea table. This thing's going to hold up. I put it together, and I am one hell of a handyman. That's not true. So also this week, it's going to be an awkward weekend for me. My wife's birthday is coming up, and so for her birthday, I booked us a couples massage. Now, I've never had a professional massage before. I don't know if you have, Shawn.
I have not had a professional massage. No.
So this is going to be interesting for me. I'm sure it'll be fine, and I'm sure it'll be relaxing. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm not the most aesthetically pleasing person to look at, and so I don't want to be that person after the massage where the masseuses are talking to each other like, oh, you would not believe the person I had to rub down today. And I don't want to be that guy. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I'll report back next week on next week's podcast.
Next week's podcast, look forward to a massage review.
And I didn't want to be like, I got an email. It was like, we got one female on staff and one male on staff for the massage. Do you prefer one over the other? And I didn't want to be like the homophobe and be like, yeah, give me the lady. Because apparently if a guy touched me, I would be gay. So I just like played it cool. Like, no, I'll take anybody. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. On next week's podcast, I will describe in as much detail as possible how awkward the massage was, because it's going to be like, just for starters, I'm not overly hairy, but I do have, a significant amount of hair, especially on my back. So, yeah, it'll be like, remove your shirt, sir. Oh God, put your shirt back on. That's no good. So, let's get into the playoff races that are going on right now. As we mentioned, we've got a lot of teams clinching, and I want to start just right off the top with Tampa Bay, and they're blowing away the league this year. As of this recording, they're 21 points up on Boston in their own division. Both teams have 3 games to go. They've already clinched the President's Trophy. Is there any way you can bet against Tampa to win the Stanley Cup? I see them going all the way this year. They're just so good, and they haven't turned it off all season.
Glass cannon.
What's that?
They're a glass cannon.
Meaning?
Meaning that a lot of their guys on the roster are injury prone.
Oh, like,
this is where I don't trust Tampa Bay. If you think about the 2 other teams who have been this dominant in NHL history in the regular season, the 70s Habs and the late 90s Red Wings, they had something that this team doesn't. This team isn't particularly physical. Now, you, of course, have the best defenseman in the league in Victor Hedman. That being said, you just don't have that physicality.
It's been okay for them so far. I mean,
it has. But when you get to rounds 2 and 3, and you've got teams like Boston, who can hit you 9 different ways by the end of the first period, can get under your skin. I don't know, because honestly, I thought Tampa was going to go last year.
Yeah, but then they lost. They seemed like they ran out of steam, and Washington beat them.
Exactly.
And Washington was the team to beat last year. But I mean, as far as I look at Tampa, I don't see anybody being any better in net. Like, Vasilevsky has been the best goalie in the league this year, as far as I'm concerned. Scoring wise, they're going to outscore you. It doesn't matter what team you throw up against them. They have a chance to outscore you. And they have a really, really solid decor. Now, again, as you mentioned, injuries can just derail anything. So
injuries can derail this. So I just think that if they get into a really physical series, I can't see them breezing through it. That doesn't mean that I don't think they're going to win the East. But I think that if any teams have a chance to take them down, it's Boston and the Islanders.
I don't know. The Islanders, really?
I think the Islanders play good physical hockey. Their fans are a bunch of whiny crybabies. Sorry, Phil. And I'm sick of them, and I wish they would stop. They make me irrationally angry to the point where I accidentally called them Vegas North. But yeah, they play good hockey. And the thing about them is they're tested. And the same thing with Boston. Boston's just a really good, really deep team. Surprisingly, I like a lot of their roster. So,
well, it's obvious Toronto and Boston are going to play each other in the first round, and Boston's probably going to have home ice advantage.
I love Tampa Bay complaining about that.
What are they complaining? I didn't hear this. What are they complaining about?
They said they felt bad.
Why?
Because they did. Just imagine playing the same team again.
I think it develops a rivalry. This was the whole point of the playoff format switch.
You have to win a series for it to be a rivalry.
Yeah, and Toronto's not doing their part, and they're not going to do their part this year.
They're not going to do their part this year.
No, they're not even close enough. I think I've been saying to people it's going to be one of these 6-game series where even though it goes 6 games, it's not close, right? I think Boston takes the first 2. And then Toronto wins the 3rd game at home, because if you lose that one, you go down 3-0 and you're done. But then Boston wins game 4.
Wins 5th.
Yeah.
6th.
Yeah. So Toronto only wins 2 games in the series because it's kind of a do or die situation, and they get it together for 2 games. But Boston will be in control the whole series. Not that Toronto has to play overly physical, but they're not physical enough in any way, and they're not playing. They're not playing good enough defense. They don't play defense as a 5-man unit, and the two defensemen that are on the ice at the time aren't good enough to handle anything Boston's going to throw at them. So I got Boston winning. The only edge that Toronto may have there is scoring, but they're not going to have the puck enough to be effective scoring. And Toronto's goalie, I believe, is better than Tuukka Rask right now.
Anderson is better than Rask, but Halak is a billion times better than Sparks. The Leafs had a really good backup, but he's out getting a revenge body in Carolina right now, and we all miss him very dearly.
Now, rumblings in Toronto earlier this week were that Sparks has run out of time, and the actual backup for the playoffs, or whenever needed, might end up being Michael Hutchinson, who's playing on the Marlies right now.
What a guy.
And he's playing on the Marlies, and they're happy with him getting playing time. But if it ever comes to a point where Anderson is injured and they need a goalie long term, he's coming up, and Sparks may still be the backup. So interesting. But if you look at
should be the backup.
Who should Hutchinson? But then Sparks has got to go on waivers, and
as he should.
Would anybody pick him up at this point?
I don't think so. If anybody picks him up, it'll be Edmonton, and
they'll just grab anybody.
Point,
yeah.
Bye, Sparky. Have fun.
Now that New York Islanders, it's possibly likely Pittsburgh. Let's say it's likely Pittsburgh.
Sure. Yeah.
The Islanders, Pittsburgh. I think the Islanders have a really great chance to own that series. I see them coming out of that series.
6 games. Again, another 6-game series that isn't particularly close. The Islanders fans love Lehner, and Lehner loves them. And that's really nice to see. Thomas Greiss is clutch. He's really developed into like a Dwayne Rollison type, where in his 30s, he's just come out of nowhere and be like, all right, guess I'll be good now. So they don't have a weak spot in net, that's for sure. And they can score 9 different ways. They can hit you 8 different ways. And while there's no one direct star aside from Barzal, but even then, he's not leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of his team.
No, and they play a solid defensive system as a unit. You know, the 5 of them. That's their style. That's what Barry Trotz has them doing. Let's look at the wild card situation in the East currently as we record. Columbus, Carolina, Montreal battling it out. Each team has 3 games left. Columbus and Carolina are the 2 teams that are in right now. Columbus wildcard number 1, Carolina wildcard number 2. Does Montreal squeeze in, and who comes out, Shawn?
I would hope that they do, and I hope Columbus is the team that falls out, but that seems unlikely right now. Montreal has to look at this season as a win. They've been leaps and bounds, and Carolina. But I think Carolina wants to make the playoffs more. I don't think that fans in Montreal are sitting around going, oh, we better make the playoffs this year. We better get swept by Tampa in the first round. They're not doing that. And the reason why they're not doing that is because they know they're not going to win a playoff series. They know they're doing a pretty solid job at rebuilding and have drafted well. And this year will add to that for sure. Carolina, I really like this team. I think that they have a good, scrappy young unit. And I think, honestly, they could steal a game from Tampa or challenge Washington even. But at this point, it looks like Columbus will be playing and losing to Washington.
Maybe.
My honest hope is,
Columbus is heating up. Like, it's all about Bobrovsky there, and he's starting to heat up.
Yeah, I know that the Florida Panthers, who are having a mediocre, not bad, but not great season, are sitting back going, man, I hope Columbus loses. We can take both their stars for nothing. And so, and they might get both of them for all we know.
Yeah, I think they'll target the goalie before they target. I mean, they would love both of them, right? But I think
they don't need Panarin. They need Bobrovsky.
Yeah, they do. They need him in a big way because the three guys they got right now are not doing it.
Roberto Luongo is gone. Reimer should come back to Toronto.
It's the worst idea ever.
No, it's not.
He cannot stop a puck right now.
Other guy.
Who's the rook? I'm not even going to pretend to know the rookie's name on Florida.
What, Montembeault?
Is that him? He got shelled for 2 goals.
That's Corey's guy.
All right. 2 goals on 4 shots last week when Florida was in Toronto. Let's switch. Yeah. Let's switch to the West here. You got Winnipeg, 4 games left to go. Nashville, 3 games left to go, but they're tied in points. And St. Louis is actually there. What is St. Louis doing? Although I don't think they have the strength to win this division, but Winnipeg is kind of sputtering, kind of average. Now they got some injury to their D-men, but do they have enough to hang on and win the division? And do they have enough to make a deep run, if not a Stanley Cup run this year?
That's tough. Again, this is just a team that just injury problems. This is what injury problems do to a team. And they're a really good team. Let's be clear. They're a team, and they're not even a team that has entered their prime. Is the other thing. They're still figuring things out. They're still trying to figure out how guys fit into the system. They're a deep team. They made a deep run last year. This is just the Central Division is, despite the fact that the team that wins it will win it with under 100 points. This is a deep division. The worst team in this division will have 80 points. That'll tell you how deep this division is. And Winnipeg and Nashville are better than their records say that they are, because they both dealt with injuries. They both had their goaltenders get burned out and come back. They're teams I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs, and they're resting starters. That's the other thing. So I think Winnipeg will win it. They're currently playing Chicago right now, tied at 3 going into overtime. And with all that, I think that on top of that, the fact of the matter is right now there's at least going to be 4 Central Division playoff teams.
So wouldn't it be interesting if somehow St. Louis takes the division and Winnipeg and Nashville have to play each other in the first round?
What a treat. What a treat. Some of the best hockey you'll ever see series.
In the first round, too.
In the first round. Yeah, that's like getting, Patrick Waugh, Chris Osgood in the first round. Like getting that. And then having St. Louis and Dallas, which itself could be a solid series. And Colorado's in there, but Arizona is technically a Central Division team too. Like it is kind of interesting that Arizona now, a playoff contender, will be going into the Central Division as teams like Minnesota and Chicago start rebuilding. It's a good time to be a fan of desert hockey.
I don't think Arizona's going to make it this year, but I mean, it's hard to say that they're not when they're only a point out currently as we record. But
they're 2 points out. Colorado lost in a shootout.
All right, so Colorado's got 3 left. Arizona's got 3 left, and Arizona's 2 out right now. So,
and Arizona's game is against the Kings, while Colorado's is against the Oilers. So
both teams suck, so they both have a chance.
Both teams suck. Edmonton was eliminated earlier today.
Of course,
and they're the first team since the 89-90 Penguins to have 2 100-point scores with my boy Leon Draisaitl and miss the playoffs.
Oh.
So I guess that means that in the next 2 years, Edmonton will win 2 cups.
According to how Pittsburgh did it, sure.
And then Draisaitl will get traded to Washington for nothing.
Oh, man. So let's looking at this here. Calgary's just incredibly surprising this year. I can't say I've watched any of their games this year. I don't bother to stay up late. They never really interested me. I know they got Goudreau, Monahan, Giordano on defense, but nothing really ever drew me to Calgary this year. And here they are. They're going to win the Western Conference. They're going to be the top seed in the Pacific Division. And yet all I heard all year is goaltending troubles, goaltending issues. So to me, that looks like one of these great teams that has this glaring weakness, and they could be knocked off. Like, if for whatever reason, let's say they play Colorado in the first round and the McKinnon line gets hot all of a sudden and the goalies for Calgary aren't hot, Calgary could be out in the first round. That could be said for anybody, but for me, it's a glaring weakness that I see for Calgary.
Yeah, I like their, David Rich is a solid goaltender, I think, but he's a 1B right now. He might elevate his game to a 1A eventually. He's young. But right now he's a 1B. My biggest problem here is that Mike Smith is old. He's had a solid NHL career. Can he do it? I don't know. He's 37. He's 23, 15, 2-2, a 2.7 GAA, but a 898 save percentage. So the goals aren't getting through, but he's not saving as much as he should. Meanwhile, Rittich, who is 26, so plenty of hockey left in him. 26, 8, 5, and 1. 262 GAA, 911 save percentage. My problem is that Mike Smith has the playoff run. He knows how to do this. Rittich doesn't. If Rittich can be hot, you can do this. If Rittich can cover the holes Mike Smith will inevitably have, you're good. You can do this. If you can't, you have to go out and get the guy who can work with Rittich to do this.
Now, speaking of goaltender issues, the other Pacific Division matchup, the specific division matchup, is San Jose and Vegas. Yeah. And that's San Jose is having major goaltender troubles this year. Well, Fleury is looking like a almost Vezina candidate. This could be one where the lower seed overcomes the higher seed, and this is based entirely on goaltending, almost how Vegas did it last year. What do you think?
Vegas is not the same team they were last year, and that's almost for the better because really their young guys are really getting a chance here. They're a very young team, with the exception of goaltending. Again, Fleury, fantastic season. He's got no one behind him. And again, there was a time where you wouldn't think of the backup in the playoffs. You have to nowadays. You do. Not just because of injury, but because there's nothing, if your backup could go out and steal you a game.
Yeah, it almost seems like you need the 1 or 2 games from your backup because something might happen. I mean, you look at Pittsburgh when they won their 2 in a row. Now they had a different situation, Murray and Fleury, so they were pretty solid there. But it seems like look at last year. Grubauer started the first 2 games, I think it was, for Washington.
Yeah, for Washington.
And then they had to go back to Holtby, who ended up helping them win the cup. So, you're right. You need both guys in the playoffs. Just before we wrap up here, Shawn, just go out on a limb. My Stanley Cup pick is Tampa Bay. I can't choose anyone else. I have no reason to choose anyone else. Tampa Bay, I can't even question them. Who is your off the cuff, just off the top of your head, Stanley Cup pick right now?
Winnipeg. In my heart, it's Winnipeg. I've been saying it since the beginning of the year. I just believe. Now, if I had to use my head, Boston.
That's a good pick. There's nothing wrong
here, folks. It's Boston.
Nothing wrong with that pick.
Now that I've said that, the Leafs are going to win that series.
No, they're not. There's no way the Leafs are winning that series. It's just not happening.
No, you know what? You might be right about that.
Just a reminder for everyone listening that once those first round matchups in the NHL playoffs are set, the HJC playoff pool will begin. And we go round by round, so it's not like a March Madness bracket where you have to pick your entire bracket all the way through. We go each round by each round. So you start with the first round and you pick the winner of each series and in how many games, and then you get points based on how correct you were. So 5 points if you get the entire thing correct, whatever, team and games. 3 points if you just get the team correct. And then you get the one little sympathy bonus point if you somehow miraculously just get the games correct, but not the team. So whoever has the most points at the end of the playoffs wins the playoff pool. You win absolutely nothing except for bragging rights to say you won the free online pool on hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. Before we sign off, Shawn, you got anything else for today, or you think we've covered everything we need to?
I think we've covered everything we need to. Sorry, I was wondering if this podcast is going to end with me throwing my headset shouting, damn it, because the Jets lost in overtime, but it's still 3-3 in overtime. For those of you hoping for me to do that, you're going to have to wait until the next time that happens.
Thanks for that live update. I hope someone is currently listening to this like 6 months from now, being like, I'm going to catch up on Jersey Nerds podcasts to see what they were talking about. And they'll really appreciate that live update. So that's
live
good.
Update.
They'll know that.
That's what we're here for.
Eventually the Jersey Nerds podcast will be a live podcast. We'll do that. So that is everything that we have for this show. Just a reminder, everything going on hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. We have the San Jose Sharks redesign. Entries are due April 5th. The next day, so 1 day later than usual, our next redesign will begin. That's the St. Louis Blues redesign. So that begins April 6th and runs for 2 weeks. So April 20th, April 19th, somewhere around there, entries will be due for that. But that doesn't begin till April 6th. And then again, as I mentioned, we have the HJC playoff pool. So I'd like to thank Shawn for joining me this week, and to stay up to date with all of our podcasts, be sure to subscribe to the HJC Podcast Network. You'll get notifications when Faker Authentic comes out every Thursday and when Throwback Throwdown comes out every Saturday. Now, heads up this week, I don't think we'll have those shows for you this week. So we might be going through some restructuring and all that kind of stuff, but that will not probably be coming out this week. We can't say for certain, but at this point, don't count on it. So thank you to all you nerds. Thank you to all you Jersey nerds for listening. Goodbye, everybody.